Hi, and welcome to VIP Asks the Candidates, a set of short videos where we ask the four main party candidates up for election to be Bristol's next mayor the questions that are important to the communities we work with. In this video, we ask what they would do for older people in Bristol and get answers and hear their views on topics including their plans to tackle casual and institutionalised ageism and age discrimination, ensuring older people are involved in the development and delivery of policy, and how Bristol can become an age-friendly city. We worked with our partner Bristol Older People's Forum to set the questions we ask in this video. Coming up, you will hear from Conservative Party candidate Alistair Watson, Green Party candidate Sandy Horrigan, Labour Party candidate Marvin Rees, Liberal Democrat candidate Caroline Gooch. Each candidate was interviewed separately, so their answers are a direct response to the questions, and they didn't get to hear what each other said in advance. We haven't edited their responses, so you can hear what they had to say in full. The Voice and Influence Partnership was set up to help make sure that individuals, groups and communities whose voices aren't always heard are listened to and are part of shaping Bristol's future. The Care Forum, who I work for, leads the project and also delivers its work supporting Bristol's Black and minority ethnic communities. The partnership also includes the Amadan Centre, who lead our multi-faith work, Wessel, who are our lead for disability, OTR, who lead our LGBTQ+ work, and Bristol Older People's Forum, who lead our work for older people. We also have our advisory partners, Centre for Deaf and Hard of Hearing People, SARI, Stand Against Racism and Inequality, and VOSCA. The Voice and Influence Partnerships work is funded through Bristol City Council's Bristol Impact Fund, but we are fully independent of the council. And now on to the important part, hearing from the candidates. If you're elected to be Mayor of Bristol, what will you do for older people?
We will engage with all the charities and the organisations, the Older People's Forum and so on. Older people, they are at risk, particularly of isolation and loneliness. So, any campaigns that we can do through the council to help that. Obviously, social services, we need to involve them. So, if there are issues and if things can be improved in some ways, then certainly, I would look at those as the mayor and try and improve the way we connect with older people and look at our care system and so forth.
I understand the huge contribution that older people have made in their lives, but still make, actually. And I'm of the view that older people can play a huge part in their communities. Very often they have more time, and I know during the pandemic those who've been able have coordinated community response and food and community gatherings and all sorts of things to respond to the pandemic. But also, even outside that, they're often the people who are volunteering to look after parks or community centres, or they're trustees of charities and mentoring young people. So I think older people have a huge contribution to make. And actually, the Older People's Forum did a film that I watched when it was launched a few weeks ago, which was fantastic and just summed that up for me completely. So, but the things that older people have raised with me as sort of key kind of issues for them, other than that sort of being listened to and playing a full part in our society and in our city, is making sure that the housing is right for all ages. So making sure that adaptations happen quickly, that people can stay in their own home for as long as they can, and then respite care for carers too. Again, many have talked about the need for if you're caring for or being cared for by a relative, just to have a bit of respite. That's something that's been brought up for me with me again and again. And then, of course, adult social care, making sure, frankly, the system is broken nationally and really doesn't work. Now, there's only so much we can do within the local authority, but I think there are some things we can do. We'd like to invest 10 million in some more residential care placements that are run by Bristol City Council. We can support charities that run adult social care to scale up, because they tend to provide the best sorts of services. So making sure that adult social care is fit for purpose and really, fighting to change the system nationally so that it really does serve older people properly and with the dignity and respect that they deserve.
I can just start by kind of wrestling a little bit with what will I do for, because it's not a language I'm a fan of. I doing things for people, I think, is in danger of kind of recreating a hierarchy and a dependency. I think it's doing with people so that they are their own leaders. And I always see my job as leaders to find good people who want to get good things done and help them to get those things done, help them to lead and shape the world around them. And much wider than that, I just have my heart aches when I think about this kind of transactional politics. Here's 3 things I'll do for you, and with these 3 things, I'll purchase your vote. Our politics needs to get beyond that. That's a broken model. It's about let's talk. Let's see if we have a kind of a shared analysis of the world, understanding of the world. Do we agree we're focused on the right things, and then how are we going to work together to do those things? So that's my approach. But having said that, there's a whole bunch of things we're trying to do to make sure Bristol's a good city, an inclusive city. We did win World Health Organization age-friendly city status, and that's because what we have been doing in the city, looking at physical access. We are, and we'll continue with living up to those principles. Interestingly, in our housing regeneration, we're upping the commitment we made on homes that are adaptable, so that people can live in their own homes for longer as their physical abilities change. Also, in our housing developments, often when we think of new housing, we're thinking of first-time buyers or young couples. We're actually intentionally trying to build intergenerational housing, so that older people are living alongside younger people, building communities, mixing up, breaking down social isolation, which is of huge importance as people age as well. And if I just say as well, the legacy of COVID, we know social isolation is a legacy of COVID, and we will be working incredibly hard, focusing on. It's one of the city priorities under the One City Plan this year to tackle the legacy of social isolation and loneliness that was in society anyway, but has been compounded over this last year. Dare I say, there's a very powerful overlap with the faith communities there, because they've been amongst the groups who have really taken on the challenge of home visits and creating spaces for people to come together to break down that isolation. But there are many other things as well. We want to support people to continue to have volunteering and paid work opportunities as they age as well, to stay active, to stay productive. We're going to be our digital exclusion program will be not just about children, it will be about older people as well, so that they can stay connected to the world, stay connected to their families as well. So that digital exclusion is going to be a huge piece of work for us as well over the coming year in particular.
So one of the things that we definitely want to do is integrate health and social care. The problem that we've got is that social care is very much the poor relation of the NHS, as if the NHS is not poor. So, but the problem is the NHS is centrally run, it gets central government funding, etc. But social care, particularly care for older people, is paid for by local government. And the money for it therefore has to come out of council tax. And I think firstly, it's fundamentally unfair that cities that have more older people end up having to pay more than cities with a lot of younger people, where they're creating the wealth. And we all get old, so it shouldn't be a case that some cities are paying more to look after the elderly than others. So it should be a centralised fund. The real issue with the NHS and social care not being joined up is that you can't get people out of hospitals into care. If people can't go home because they need some care, and they have to go into sometimes short-term care in a nursing home before they can go home, getting a place for them is really difficult. They can't do that until that's in place. There's loads of paperwork to do with that. And then, so you get people sitting in hospitals waiting to go into nursing homes, or waiting to go home because they need something putting in place at home that takes forever. And then that means you can't get people from casualty into wards, because the wards are blocked with people who can't leave. They don't need to be in hospital anymore, but they've got nowhere to go. And this is it goes all the way around. And this is why it has to be an integrated system with integrated funding, because the one impacts on the other all the time. I think there's also definitely a lack of it's all privately provided, which I don't think is necessarily a good thing either, because there's so much of a variation in quality. And I know the CQC is supposed to sort of sort that out, but I don't know. It's very expensive, and I don't know if it's most, but a lot of people are very unhappy about the care their elderly relatives receive in homes. And then GPs also, we want to work with the CCGs to provide more GP places, which it's very, very difficult to get an appointment. There are a lot of places where you can't get a GP appointment for kind of a couple of weeks. And that's no good. If you're ill, you need to be seen straight away. So we definitely want to increase the number of GPs, which should help older people. But then for older people who aren't in homes and not sick, what can we do? I think during COVID, we did quite well with the communities thing, checking on neighbours, and I think it would be good if we could keep that sort of thing going. So I think we need to look at how we can encourage good neighbourhoods to make sure that people aren't lonely. I think that's a key thing that we could take forward out of COVID, that's really one good thing that's come out of it, is people looking out for each other, encouraging community. And we want to build livable neighbourhoods, and we want to have community councils as well. So I think in some ways, by devolving power a little bit, we can encourage more of a sense of community. And also we want to revitalise our high streets, which I think is also good for older people, because if they've got shops and things around them which are really close, rather than having to go into town, I think a lot of older people who are not working like to have something close by and a community around them that they can go to local shops and things, and don't drive, or have got past the age where they want to drive, or they can't anymore because of dementia or failing eyesight, etc. So and I think people get very isolated when that happens to them. So we need to look at how, I think livable neighbourhoods and 10-minute communities will all help that, but we also need to have the sort of community space. The other things that we'd like to do are bring a system. Some cities have got this already. I think we have got it in Bristol. It's a system where young people can get free accommodation, living in with an older person who just helps them with things like shopping. I can't remember what it's called now, but it is a system that it exists in Bristol, and I think it's something that we could widely roll out. We've got a lot of older people in big houses that are empty, that need a help, need a friend, need someone just to chat to, and if we can get free accommodation for young people in return for providing companionship, I think that would be a solution for quite a lot of people's loneliness, and the needing homes. So I'd like to expand that, definitely. and see if we can, you know, help solve a couple of problems in one go.
Can you outline any plans or policies you have developed to tackle casual and institutionalized ageism and age discrimination?
I haven't got any plans or policies at this stage on institutionalized ageism or discrimination. If that is the case, certainly within the the council services or council employment, then I'd certainly want to look at that, and I hope that the council has a policy on those matters for people employed. I myself are 65, so I'm getting towards the age where I need to make sure that these things happen, because there's a lot of us at this age who feel we've still got several years of good working lives ahead of us, and I would certainly like to, and and I think it's good for society. That there is an issue we have with younger people for unemployment, but there are a lot of jobs out there that are needed to be done, and I think some of us will have to work longer and into what we'd have previously called old age, but doesn't feel very old at the moment for me, and I don't think it'll feel old for a lot of people. So if there's anything to be done, again, practically, we'll do it.
We certainly, ageism is something that needs to be tackled as much as sexism and racism does. So there shouldn't be, cut-offs for age for certain jobs. I don't know why there would be. It seems quite short-sighted. Why would they bring up a age limit for something? If you can do the job, you can do the job. So I think we probably need to make it illegal, if we can push for that in Parliament, to have age limits on things. Institutionalized ageism and age discrimination. I think when something's institutionalized, you really have to change the culture in an area. So I think maybe we need to have a little think about how people are portrayed in the media, how people are portrayed on screen. So maybe changing the what we see as being valuable, and I think so the media has something to say about that, something to do with that, and I just think yes, we need to value people. I'm a bit nonplussed by it, because I kind of don't really know what we can do other by saying you can't do that while you're doing that. We haven't got a specific plan or policy about it, other than it's just another ism, it's just another othering, it's another prejudice, and we want to get rid of all of these prejudices there. And if someone can do a job, then they should have every right to apply for and get that job as anybody else, even if they're older. So I can't say that we haven't got any policies on it specifically. No, we should be.
Where people are treated in a hateful way, obviously we continue to work within our existing legal powers with organisations such as SARI to make sure that people are held to account. But in terms of that kind of subtle, impersonal rollout of processes that just discriminate against people on the basis of age, that's the basis of age. We're trying to build that out. We are going to be building our own older people's group within the one city office, and that group, just like the other mayoral commissions, will have a chance to grab a hold of, well, to do a couple of things. One is to make sure that city plan we're developing and the targets we're developing are designed to build a city that is inclusive and does not institutionally, as it were, discriminate against older people. And they will also be able to talk to the other thematic boards and make sure that those other thematic boards understand how their timelines need to be inclusive and non-discriminatory. So remember, we've got homes, we've got transport, we've got children's board, we've got environment, economy, the chance to make sure that what they do is one that builds a city that's good for people of all ages. So we've got an equalities charter in the city. Again, we try to hold organizations accountable to that. We don't always have the legal power to do so, but having got everyone to sign up to it, we have the moral power to do so. And often that's the way we find ourselves working, really trying to influence the way organizations behave. But we'll build it into the physical regeneration of the city as well, as I said, with housing and the transport infrastructure that's coming through.
So look, I understand the huge contribution that older people have made in their lives, but still make, actually. And I'm of the view that older people can play a huge part in their communities. Very often they have more time. And I know during the pandemic, those who've been able have coordinated community response and food and, community gatherings and all sorts of things to respond to the pandemic. But also even outside that, they're often the people who are volunteering to look after parks or community centres, or they're, trustees of charities and, mentoring young people. So I think, older people have a huge contribution to make. And actually, the Older People's Forum did a film that I watched when it was launched a few weeks ago, which was fantastic and just summed that up for me completely. So, but the things that older people have raised with me as sort of key kind of issues for them, other than that sort of being listened to and playing a full part in our society and in our city, is making sure that the housing is right for all ages. So making sure that adaptations happen quickly, that people can stay in their own home for as long as they can, and then respite care for carers too. Again, many have talked about the need for, if you're caring for or being cared for by a relative, just to have a bit of respite. That's something that's been brought up to for me. With me again and again. And then of course adult social care, making sure, frankly, the system is broken nationally and really doesn't work. Now there's only so much we can do within the local authority, but I think there are some things we can do. We'd like to invest 10 million in some more residential care placements that are run by Bristol City Council. We can support charities that run adult social care to scale up, because they tend to provide the best sorts of services. So making sure that adult social care is fit for purpose and really, fighting to change the system nationally so that it really does serve older people properly and with the dignity and respect that they deserve.
Avoiding tokenism and generalizations, how will you ensure that older people from diverse backgrounds are involved in the design, development and delivery of policy, not just for adult social care?
Well, that's really through the structure we set up through the One City office, which is there to really, blow open the doors really for people to be able to come in and to shape the city's future. We have these thematic boards that are made up not just of council officers, but people from the public, private, voluntary community sector. Trade unions are there as well. They can, we can support people to come and attend those boards, or even become members of those boards, to make sure they are there involved in that mix of conversation. And it is a historic challenge in the city, but making sure that people come from a wider range of communities into those spaces is hugely important. I've talked about setting up an older people's board for the city as well, sitting alongside like the culture board, the Commission on Race Equality, so that we've got these boards that are formally a part of the One City approach structure, but that gives them a chance to call the other thematic boards in, have conversations. Like, there's a chance to have a conversation with the Health and Wellbeing Board, for example, and really set out, okay, how do we make sure that health and well-being in the city is good for older people? Similar has happened, if I say, between the Health and Wellbeing Board and the Homes Board, when they talked about the relationship between homes and health. We could talk about health and age, homes and age. We could talk about transport and age. So there's a chance for that, for people to come together to really make sure that understanding is in the other boards, and to push priorities in that will make sure that this is a city that is good for people of all ages. I mean, I make a personal commitment to it myself. All I say is, I don't think it's it's not my approach to leadership to think that I have to know everything. I can't. But what I do aim to do is be available, and to have a cabinet. And there's a fantastic equalities champion in Asher, who's an absolute warrior in the city. I'd say in this, as I've done so much for equalities in Bristol, to speak to our cabinet leads and say something's not happening. Can we talk? And then let's make sure our voices are heard. And between myself, Asher, and other cabinet, we go to bat on that. And sometimes processes don't work, and it does take a phone call. It does take a conversation to make sure that someone somewhere gives that process a bit of a bump to make sure it's inclusive when it hasn't been.
So thank you. And look, it's an interesting thing, isn't it, that older people, although they're not a statistically a minority group, are often treated in a sort of very similar way to other minority groups. So again, the key is to reach out and listen. So through consultations, through our citizens' assemblies, and making sure that they're involved in organisations like the Bristol Older People's Forum, represent older people's voices in the big decisions that we have to make in the city. We will fund support services. So again, helping older people to access the services, but also the consultations they need. And finally, again, within council services, that training for staff to make sure that in the same way as you might have an unconscious bias around race or sexuality or whatever, actually that you can recognize that and that older people do have a valuable part to play in our society and our decision making. And that's something that very much we need to embed across the council and all of the services that it has to offer.
I think it's involvement and engagement. I very much want to engage all communities and all people from all different backgrounds. And yes, that there are issues that I think that we're only just now starting to think more about, that and it just sort of gender based, that there's somewhat of a difference in how men age and women age, and I'm sure that's also true of communities. Some communities have very strong family networks, others don't. So we do need to, and it's not just, as you say, tokenism. We don't want just the one person, the Asian on the board, just because we can show that we're being diverse. That's not how we want to do it. We want real engagement and consultation there. So I'd certainly be for that. That's how I like to work.
Brilliant. Thank you. Okay, and then the last one. And so they gave me a little note on what they mean by age-friendly city.
Right.
So it's sort of
toilets. We want more toilets. Yeah.
There were a lot of questions about toilets. Yeah. We did a survey out to members. That was it. That is a hot topic. But yeah, by age-friendly city, they said they mean how older people are seen as part of the community, socially, economically, and physically. And by physically, they mean things like what would a neighborhood look like? How could it be age-friendly? But the age-friendly can also mean for all ages.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. How will you ensure that Bristol becomes an age-friendly city?
I think sometimes maybe doing surveys. There's a lot of things where we want to do citizens assemblies and things like that, or things on climate, things where there are massive issues to solve. I don't know whether we would do that for this, but it's a possibility. The other is to do surveys. and to make sure that we get a proper cross-section of the community. You don't want to do tokenism, but you do want to make sure that everyone is represented and properly represented. So it would probably be a good idea to do a survey in a particular age group, and make sure that we cut across the whole socioeconomic and racial and religion and the whole range of the population, to find out what the issues are for older people in the city. So I can't think of how you would get that information without actually going out and asking people.
Thank you.
And also using groups like this. So when people have actually, made a group, and I'm amazed at how many community groups there actually are. Before I started this process of running for mayor, I had no idea there were so many groups out there doing the research, collecting all the information, and I'm really actually very, very impressed about how many groups there are, and I think it's well worth politicians engaging with them, because you're doing all the hard work. So I would, say definitely, always engage with the pressure groups that are around.
How will you ensure that Bristol becomes an age-friendly city?
I suppose what we want to do is have on a city scale the kind of environment that you have in a village, where everybody's represented and everybody looks out for everybody else. And in a city, because it's much more anonymous, you tend to stay in your own socioeconomic bubble, and your own hub of friends, and people are not very aware of what goes on outside of their own bubble. So I think maybe we need to have ways for people to engage in their community, so that they experience other bubbles, and we can all talk to each other and interact. And that's probably another reason, I think, for having the community councils and parish councils, is make a community a real community, so that people have chance to meet people outside of their normal little bubble that they hang around with, and then we could get that much more of a kind of a village feel. I think some social media is quite good for that. So some of the like Nextdoor is very good, because there are all sorts of people on there, and people have always got an answer to something. If you need something, there's always somebody who knows, oh, I know a chap who can do that. And I think it would be nice to get that out into the real world, as opposed to just being a virtual world. So and I think we need to encourage people to mix with their neighbours more. I think maybe, God, how about this summer we have a program of street parties? That would be nice. It used to happen a lot, and I think one of the reasons it doesn't happen so much now is that the streets are clogged with cars and people don't know their neighbours. And so maybe we could encourage people to go out and have a street party and get to know your neighbours. And certainly it's something that I didn't know my neighbours till the pandemic started, and then we started a WhatsApp group, and and it's become quite a close-knit community now. But I think in the past those communities always existed, and it's very recently that we've kind of become very siloed in our own little homes. And I think we need to get out and enjoy meeting other people of other ages and listening to their stories. So I don't know. I'd love to have a really great answer, but I think it's something that we need to do.
How the city develops. One of the things, and I live in a community where we have every year we have our own street party. We close off the street. I know all my neighbours. I know the older ones, the younger ones, and it really works extremely well. So that, you know, if somebody does have any problems, then the community comes around and works and helps. And even if that's just sort of baking a cake and dropping it off, or whether it's cutting the grass for people, or whether it's actually sitting down with people and talking and understanding and making sure nobody's falling behind. I think those are the sort of communities that work well. And I think the concept of livable neighborhoods that's coming in is probably one of those concepts. Not just that, but, you know, that can help, I think, when you know, we reduce traffic maybe around a neighborhood so that people can get out and meet people a bit more easily without having to worry about getting run down or the fumes and so on. But you know, there's also, you know, other areas, you know, which I think the local centres are very important, particularly to older people, but even to younger people. And, you know, being able to walk to your local supermarket, post office, whatever, and having those local centres where there's a coffee shop that you can go into or sit down in a park, those are extremely important. We don't, you know, it's the centre of Bristol is fantastic and it's the beating heart of the city, but not everyone's going to travel into the harbour side to have their recreation. We need to have these local centres. I want to see those as more important. I think some of the suburbs have been in a way ignored a bit for let's sort out, you know, let's do great work in the centre, and those sort of other centres in every ward in the city. I think we need to look at that, because that's where people mix and that they get to know each other and they get to support each other. So I'd certainly be interested in how we can improve that, and how the council, through planning, through investment, can.
As we've discussed in many answers to the question, it's really important that all views are heard on big issues, whatever they might be. And so very often the council consults on issues or tries to go out to talk to people, but just waits for, frankly, the loudest voices to respond and give their views. And you can often get a very skewed view that way. So for me, one of the key things I want to do is to make sure that consultations genuinely represent the people affected, or who want to have a say. So that means, of course, being open and receiving emails and letters and things from whoever wants to send them in. But you then look at your response, who has responded, and then you reach out to those communities who haven't responded, and you actively seek out their views. Just before lockdown, I went to the first lockdown, I went to an older people's and elders group in the Malcolm X Centre, listening to older people from the Windrush generation, and you know, hearing their stories, hear their views, but also the challenges that they faced, you know, accessing benefits, some very specifically around the Windrush issues, but some just because you know, of IT literacy or access to equipment and that kind of thing. So, you know, it's really important, and this is something I've done in my working life, is to reach out to those communities. And I would expect every consultation on whatever matter the council is consulting on, that there should be representative views, that the consultation document should say, you know, younger people think this, older people think this, and then that's broken down into minority groups for older and younger people, or disabled people, or whatever. So that's my expectation, is that consultations genuinely represent the people, and if that we're trying to consult with, and if they don't have, if there are groups that are missing, we actively reach out to garner their views.
I think I just feel the need to be a bit real here, and I'm loath to say I can ensure anything in a really complicated world in which there are so many things determining our life outcomes, over which no mere human being, even a mayor has, or even a prime minister has control. There are so many things determining it. But I can say that it is an absolute commitment of ours to make sure that Bristol's a city for people of all ages, of all backgrounds. We've, from the very beginning, talked about an inclusive economy, so that people of all backgrounds can get access to the economic opportunity city. I've talked about Bristol being a place that has a fantastic story to tell to the outside world, 2 world-class universities, a third of the world's natural history broadcasting, foodie city, thriving culture, but one in which tens of thousands of people don't share in that amazing story, whether it through poverty, discrimination, inequality, social fracture, whatever those drivers are that lead them to be excluded. So, but we've set out to be an inclusive city. In our housing development, we're stressing intergenerational housing, not just a block of affordable for a certain type of people. We up in Southmead, there's a development with 6-7 different tenures of housing on it. So housing is going to be one of those biggest determinants. We're really we're through the digital exclusion work we're doing as well, trying to recognizing the role that digital now plays in making sure people are connected to opportunities, to each other. We're making sure that older people are included in that, as well as younger people. The transport plans we're bringing through, the bus deal, and ultimately the mass transit system, again, is really important. Some years ago, when we were looking at extremism in Bristol, actually, one of the points people made was one of the biggest determinants of social fracture within Bristol is the poor quality of public transport. So the bus deal, increasing the frequency of buses, going for free travel for under 25s, but obviously getting more affordable fares across the piece, and then ultimately a mass transit system, including underground, that really physically connects Bristol out of town estates to centre city and all the rest of it. Again, we can have more of that people's sense of physical belonging to Bristol, where sometimes people, I think, were physically excluded from the city, as well. But as a standard for all of our institutions, to me, as again, we did win age-friendly city status, which is for older people, but I take the point. But through the one city approach, by bringing all those organisations together as we have, the council, the police, the health service, our private sector, our trade unions, our voluntary sector, we as a collection of organisations that shape life in Bristol can make that statement around inclusion, and we stand a much better chance of delivering that than if it's just me doing it as the council. So that structure, I think, has been incredibly important. It's one of the reasons we've been able to respond so well to COVID, getting food out to people, setting up the We Are Bristol helpline, continuing to tackle period poverty and all the other things that we've been doing in the cities, because we brought the city together, and that's the approach we'll take. But we would be all ears on ideas from yourselves on what those key challenges are to making sure Bristol is an inclusive city for all ages.
Thank you to our VIP citizen members and the communities we work with for your involvement and questions, and to the candidates for taking part.